Yo, what is going on, guys? So apparently there's been news that has come out, I think like 2 or 3 days ago. Um, it's not news about Dragon Ball Super returning, even though that's what like the majority of people wanted to hear. But instead, we got some news from Akira Toriyama's original editor. Now, this guy Torishima, a lot of people really don't know who he is, and I don't blame them for not knowing who he is because I didn't know who he was. And then I found out last year actually who he was after Toriyama's passing. I got really deep into it and, was looking into who was responsible for the greatness that is Dragon Ball Z. But Torishima is apparently one of Akira Toriyama's original editors that he told Toriyama that the Android saga basically was not good. And what he did was he told him to basically give Cell 3 forms, and he told him how to he basically just gave his 2 cents on the Cell saga and how it should have been. He also was the one that said that Cell was ugly in both of his forms, and that's how he ended up having 3 forms. So the greatest saga in Dragon Ball, arguably the greatest saga in Dragon Ball history, the Android saga, was heavily influenced by this man Torishima, and also there was another editor, I forget his name, you guys will be able to look him up as well, that also worked alongside Torishima and Akira Toriyama. Now that that's out the way, let's get into what was said recently by this editor. So basically he's throwing shots at Daima. He said that Daima was trash, and he said that he would have rathered the story take a turn to focus on Vegeta, and that, Daima was trash. Now, here are my thoughts on the whole situation and the comments that he made, right? So, the thing is this. Daima, for a lot of people, if you don't actually watch Dragon Ball Daima, just by looking at it or just by falsely judging it off of the way it looks, it's easy to say that it's trash because, let's be honest here, the animation was pretty good, but I think the style of the animation just isn't appealing to a lot of people because everybody is much skinnier and leaner. And the thing is that the reason for that is because in the manga, Akira Toriyama's style had changed to a more leaner type of design. So everyone's skinny. You can look up a picture of Trunks. Akira Toriyama drew a picture of future Trunks. I think it was recently, back when Super was about to come out. And you can see that his design for the Dragon Ball characters drastically changed from being beefy and muscular to very, very slim, even skinny, some would say. So I think that because of people seeing that and the art style kind of turns people off of Daima, but Daima is actually pretty good. Daima is some of the best material to come out in the last decade or so, including the Broly movie. So I think he's wrong about Daima. I think that Daima is pretty good, but I can see why he would make that judgment. And honestly, I don't know if maybe he did see Daima and he just didn't like it. But I can kind of understand where that opinion came from, because a lot of the newer stuff in Dragon Ball has taken a more Pokemon, more of a childish type of tone. I don't know if that makes any sense. Whereas other animes like Bleach, One Piece, etc., Jujutsu Kaisen, you can tell that those animes are so popular because they're not trying to cater to any type of particular audience. They're just being shonen. And they're being shonen without trying to cater to children. The problem that I think Torishima has spoken about also in the past, way before this, is that Dragon Ball has taken a turn to cater towards more children in order to sell more merchandise and thus make more money. So that is where the whole hatred for Daima comes in, is the fact that yes, I say Daima was great, but there's definitely an aura around Daima that surrounds merchandise and also making sure that the show is kid friendly enough for kids to see. Because Akira Toriyama actually wanted blood in Daima, but we don't get that much of it. I think there's like one scene where we do get it from Goku and Vegeta in like the very first 2 episodes or something like that. But yeah, so I can kind of see why he's saying that, but I also disagree. I don't think Daima's trash. I just think that its potential was stifled by, the same thing that I feel like ruined the potential of Dragon Ball Super, which was being catered towards children and, kind of dumbing things down so that children can understand. Not to go too far off on this because I want to talk more about it, but I also want to bring up the fact that if any of you are familiar with Power Rangers, right, there was always a Japanese version of Power Rangers that was running alongside of the American versions of Power Rangers the show. So they would basically just adapt what was going on in Japan and make it their own Americanized version, which is nothing wrong with that. But I can see here a little bit of the same similarity where a lot of the earlier Power Rangers shows like Time Force and Explore the Galaxy, and even Power Rangers dating as far back to or early on as Power Rangers Samurai. The Japanese versions of those shows actually had a lot more depth to the story, to the point where, as an adult, you could watch those Japanese shows, those versions of Power Rangers, and you would actually be just as interested as a child would. Basically, the tone and the theme of those Japanese Power Rangers shows were a lot more mature and took a lot more, I guess you could say that, to make it short, they didn't insult the audience of the children. It wasn't dumbed down, it wasn't catered to children. Surprisingly enough, there was a lot of blood, there were a lot of deaths, there were a lot of heavy plot points, and there was a lot of emotional understanding. There was a lot of emotional moments where I guess I'm just not good at explaining it, but you guys understand what I'm getting at here. The show was basically aimed towards teenagers to adults instead of just being catered specifically towards younger kids who are ages from like 5 to 8 or whatever. So, that's basically it. So I find similarity there, because with Dragon Ball, I feel like when Super came out, they were trying their best to not make the story too hard to grasp and too hard to understand, and they felt the need that they didn't need to really bring any type of complex storytelling to Dragon Ball, because it's never been that either, but I just feel like it was dumbed down too much. But anyway, let's get on to the comments about Vegeta. So I actually agree 1000% with Toriyama on this. I made a video dating back like a year or 2 years ago talking about Vegeta and how Vegeta needs to have his own arc. The reason I say this is because I feel like Vegeta is a very complex character, and I know some people like Battle Memes by Omari says that he hates Vegeta and that he's irredeemable and he's just a bad character and he's always jealous. And it's like, I get that, but he's missing the point. That the point is Vegeta is not just a one-dimensional character. He goes through a lot of things throughout the show that change him as a person, and he grows a lot. Now, if you disregard Dragon Ball Super, and you take into account what type of man Vegeta became in the Toei adaptation, which was GT, there is room for growth for Vegeta. That version of Vegeta is considered the most well-written Vegeta out of all of Dragon Ball by many. And I think that Toriyama, if he was more involved with this show, that he would know exactly where to take Dragon Ball. Imagine an arc where Vegeta is stranded on a distant planet and his spaceship blows up, or his spaceship is inoperable, right? And now he's stuck on he's abandoned, and he's stuck on a distant planet with Bola, and he has to protect his daughter, right? That would make for an amazing arc. Just imagine that, Vegeta having to fend for his life and protect his children on a far off distant planet with no way of trying to contact Bulma or no way of trying to contact anybody to help get him back to Earth. Something like that, right, where we focus solely on Vegeta as a character would be amazing, right? We would be able to see Vegeta have to make difficult choices on his own and actually see that he was able to defeat a main antagonist, trust himself, make all of his own choices on his own, and actually solo an entire arc by himself. Imagine how fucking badass that would be. And that would then solidify a lot of Vegeta fans and, make people feel like Vegeta isn't just a plot device to show how strong Goku is. He's actually worthy, and he's actually just as strong and just as important as Goku. And I've always felt like Vegeta has never been like my favorite character. Well, I guess you could say he's closer to one of my favorites, but I would really love that for him. I think that, when people say they're Vegeta fans, they get a lot of backlash, they get a lot of flack because like, oh, you're a Vegeta fan, like he always gets trashed in every fight. He points his thumb at himself. They completely humiliated him against Gas in the manga. They completely fucked up Vegeta's character with having him be built up in the moral arc for absolutely no reason. And I feel like Akira himself has even said he hates Vegeta. So, by Toriyama stating that he wants Vegeta to have his own arc, that really does add value to Dragon Ball as a whole, if you really think about it. Because now you're taking an angle where the author did not want to expand upon, and you're expanding it. And on top of that, like I said before, Vegeta fans like myself would fucking enjoy something like this, okay? It's not going to be about Goku. It's not going to be Goku time. It's not going to be Goku coming to save everybody. It's not going to be the same old tropes. This time we have something different. And this time there are real stakes at hand, where Vegeta is forced to save the people that he loves with no help from anybody else. And to me, that makes for a golden 10 out of 10 Dragon Ball story. Now, for the people who don't agree with that, I don't know what to tell you guys. Maybe y'all are drunk. Maybe y'all are high. I don't know. But that to me sounds fucking amazing. And I would have greenlit that shit a long time ago. Because it's way overdue, to be honest. And yeah, so that's just my thoughts on Toriyama's opinion, or his thoughts. And this man should be respected regardless of how you take his opinion, because he did have a hand in original Dragon Ball, and I think he's a far superior, far better editor than Toyotaro. I really do think so. I think his ideas are very good. I think that he was also one of the people that vouched for having American rock music in the Dragon Ball movies, which is something a lot of people on Instagram and TikTok and on social media expressed their passion for, because there are memes and TikToks and all types of shit, reels like that, where they mash up like Deftones or rock music, simply because, back then, that was what Dragon Ball was associated with. It was associated with hardcore, raw energy with that type of music, and it was just badass, Dragon Ball back then, when it was first becoming very big, this is the type of energy, this is the type of vibe that Dragon Ball was. And it was like this for a very long time. For the last, I think you could say from 1999 all the way up into 2012, 2009, even 2010. Dragon Ball has had that specific type of, just a specific type of energy to it that was associated with it for so long. And I think that through those 15 to 20 years, those are actually the most important years for the show. People, their favorite moments come from that era. People have favorite moments in Dragon Ball Super, but the majority, the good chunk of characters people like, characters people want in games, stories, movies, different characters, different plot points and different things like that, they all come from that era of from 1999 up to 2010, 2011. Like, even a little past that. You know, that gap where we didn't receive anything new for Dragon Ball, that gap was the gap where people actually, I guess you could say, we're so hungry for it then. You know, we got a lot of great things from that era. But yeah, not to make the video go on and on and on, let me know what you guys think about Torishima's comments, because personally, I'm not biased at all. I mean, I like Daima, but I just feel like, you know, there were some things that definitely ruined the show a little bit, like the lack of action up until like the last couple episodes. And then I do, you know, once again think that Vegeta deserves to have his own arc, to put some respect on his name, because the way that they did Vegeta, I remember watching or keeping up with the manga when he was fighting Granola. And, you know, I was so angry. I remember how angry I was that Vegeta got a new transformation only to be stomped and to lose. And people say, well, it served a greater purpose. I do not want to hear that shit. Vegeta deserves to have a fucking win, a clear win. He deserves to dominate the same way he dominated Android 19 when he first became Super Saiyan. Vegeta needs more of those moments. But anyways, guys, that's my thoughts on Torishima.